Hey, I want to welcome you to CPC's Protection Policy Training. It really is great to be able to offer you this online training so that you can watch these videos from the very comfort of your home. As you listen to the various pastors share their part in this policy training, we'd ask that you would take notes and be prepared to ask us questions in person. We look forward to your correspondence with us to ensure that we provide the greatest safety here at CPC. So, why are we doing this? Well, we really want to make sure that our volunteers are protected, that they are ensured of safety, their personal safety, and the safety of their reputation. We also want to make sure that there's a safe and secure environment for minors and adults of the vulnerable sector. Throughout this training, you're going to hear certain terms, and I want to just give you the definitions of some key things that you will hear. First of all, when we talk about child, we're referring to anybody who's 11 years or younger. Youth is somebody who's between the ages of 12 and 17. A minor is someone who is 17 years of age or younger, and an adult is somebody who's 18 years or older. When we refer to a vulnerable person, we're talking about a person, including adults with physical or mental disabilities, who may be subject to abuse or harassment from someone who is in an unsupervised position of power or authority over them. So, let me talk to you about some of the key types of abuse and some of the key terms that we will use through this training. First of all, physical abuse. Physical abuse is any intentional physical force or action which results or could result in an injury and which exceeds that which could be considered reasonable discipline. Sexual abuse is exposure of a person to sexual stimulation inappropriate for his or her age and role. In particular, it includes the sexual exploitation of a child who is not developed mentally, capable of understanding or resisting the contact, as well as the sexual exploitation of a child or adolescent who may be psychologically or socially dependent on the perpetrator. Emotional or verbal abuse is a pattern of hurting a person's feelings to the point of damaging their self-respect. It includes verbal attacks as well as insults, humiliation, or rejection. Spiritual abuse. It's not one that we talk about often, but this is what we are referring to when we say someone has been spiritually abused. It's the use of coercive or manipulative tactics that bypass a person's critical faculties, prey on psychological weaknesses, undermine relationships with family or religious institutions, or mask the true nature of Christian conversion. Neglect. Neglect is the failure of those responsible for the care of a minor or other vulnerable person to meet their physical, emotional, or medical needs, to an extent that the minor or vulnerable person's health, development, or safety are endangered. Harassment. Harassment is any improper conduct by an individual that is directed at and offensive to another person or persons in which the individual knew or ought to reasonably have known would cause offense or harm. Discrimination, a key topic in today's society. Differential treatment based upon a personal characteristic which has an adverse impact upon an individual or group. Some examples of personal characteristics include race, ancestry, place of origin, ethnic origin, citizenship, faith, creed, sex, sexual orientation, age, marital status, family status, or handicap. When we talk about exposure to domestic violence, it typically falls into three primary categories. First, hearing a violent event. Secondly, being directly involved as an eyewitness, intervening, or being used as part of a violent event. And third, experiencing the aftermath of a violent event. When we refer to improper touching, we are talking about touching which creates feelings of violation, confusion, or isolation, possibly including kissing a child, coaxing a child to give a kiss, extended hugging or tickling, touching a child in any area normally covered by a swimsuit, carrying an older child, or having them sit on an adult's lap. When we talk about improper discipline, we're talking about anything that involves inappropriate and harmful attempts to control a child, such as yelling, screaming, threatening, or physically hurting them. So friends, those are the key terms that we want to look at today in our protection policy, and we will take you through each section based upon the various levels of people that we minister to and some key topics that you need to consider.
In this segment, we will be looking at ministry recruitment and screening process that is found on pages 6 to 9 in your policy. Of course, you are a part of this recruitment, and that's why you're taking this training. So we will review the process that's involved. Recruitment is the responsibility of the ministry leader, and the screening is then the responsibility of our CPC Protect Executive Assistant. All prospective volunteers or ministry personnel are to submit to this recruitment and screening process. Individuals will submit and complete an application form, reference checks, an interview, criminal record check, and vulnerable sector search, the training, and then there is a final approval by the ministry leader. What are the qualifications to serve in the church, to be a part of any of the ministries? Well, first and foremost, you must be a member or an adherent of CPC. That means regularly attending our services, whether it is our morning services or an age-specific service. You must be with us for at least 6 months in attendance. And as an aside, that is just a little different from our Compassion Center food bank personnel that fall just under a little bit of a different category. Individuals who have been accused or convicted or are under suspicion of crimes against children or youth, who have been convicted of violent crimes or other relevant crimes, will not have any involvement in ministries in which children or youth or any vulnerable people participate. So the ministry application, you probably have already filled one out, but all prospective ministry volunteers or personnel must complete an application form, and those appendix are noted for you. And all original forms are kept confidential, and any associated records with your application are kept on file permanently in a secure place. Reference checks are vital, and they must be received from at least 2 individuals, and you'll be asked to provide those names on the application form. A liability release must be signed from you before reference checks are conducted. References provided must be consistent with the appropriate categories for adults and youth who wish to work with children or a vulnerable person. Reference checks will be conducted by telephone to confirm the suitability of any applicant wanting to serve in the church. As I indicated, an interview is a part of the process, and that will be conducted at the discretion of the ministry leader or a designated person. Police record checks are obviously a vital part of our process, and so police record checks and vulnerable sector scans must be conducted on all ministry personnel serving with children, youth, or vulnerable persons who are 18 years of age or older. Police checks, record checks are to be renewed every 3 years. Police record checks are to be kept on file permanently. And no individual can be placed in a position of leadership or trust with children, youth, or a vulnerable adult until the police record checks are completed. And this is a vital part of our process. Those police records must be completed before you can step into any position of volunteering. And so in Appendix H in your manual, in your policy book, you will find the procedures for the police record check. Applications can be done online for a police record check. People with no internet access, you can certainly contact us here at the office, and we can be of some assistance to you to help you in that process. For those 18 years of age and older, the request forms are applicable for service with the vulnerable sector. You will want to look for that form online and then verify the information is complete on the online form. It is important that you include, and this is vital, that you include a volunteer letter for the relevant police department on the CPC, on our church letterhead that is signed by our Protect administrator, and that letter will have a pertinent ID. This is critical in the process, so don't jump ahead of yourself. Make sure that you have that volunteer letter from us before you make any application online. If you're not completing this request online, you can visit your pertinent police station of your jurisdiction with all your relevant pieces of ID and, again, that CPC volunteer letter to ensure a quicker process than mailing the application. There is a fee associated with police checks, so please keep your receipt and the church will certainly reimburse you that amount. And just a reminder again that police checks are valid for 3 years and then must be renewed. And we have that on record, and so we can remind you when that needs to be renewed. As part of our process of screening, there is a training component, and that's why you're a part of this today. All ministry personnel serving with children, youth, and the vulnerable persons must receive a paper or electronic copy of the CPC Protect Handbook, and you should have one of those right now. Training is to include a review of all these policies and procedures, and then all volunteers or ministry personnel are to affirm that they have read the policy, that they understand it, and the procedures that pertain to the area of their ministry. The training, ministry personnel or the volunteers will be educated about your legal obligation to report suspected abuse and to recognize and to identify the symptoms of abuse and molestation. All ministry personnel are required to attend these training sessions at least once a year, either in person or electronically, and so that's why this video recording as an option for you. Attendance is taken at the training courses, and that is noted on the personnel file for each ministry volunteer or personnel. For electronic sessions, there must be a proof of completion that is then submitted to the CPC Protect Executive Assistant, and we'll provide you with a few more details of how you give proof of the completion of that training. There is a little bit of an exemption, and that is the qualifications for support staff. So individuals working in a support role, such as food services at things like our VBS, will be exempted from the normal screening that we would do and the requirements, as long as there are procedures in place where that individual, that support individual, has no direct contact with children or the vulnerable person. So there is a little window of exemption there. However, in contrast, individuals providing sound or projection or similar services at special events will be required to be certified in the same manner as any other volunteer or ministry personnel. And as I indicated, there is an approval. The completed application must be signed off by the appropriate minister, leader, or pastor to indicate successful completion of the relevant screening procedures. And so there you have the ministry screening procedures.
This is the Children's Ministry Policy and Procedures for those that are from ages birth, all the way to grade 5. So here in Kids Ministry, we have ratios put in place to ensure the safety for both all the kids and for all of our ministry personnel or all of our volunteers. So this includes any off-site and on-site trips or activities that we have. So this does not take into account any two unrelated personnel that needs to be present in the room. So the ratios that we have in place here at the church that we tried to uphold is 1 ministry personnel for every 4 to 5 toddlers or preschool kids, and then 1 ministry personnel for about every 7 to 10 elementary aged kids. Now, continuing talking about staffing in our classrooms to comply with our insurance and to provide adequate supervision for all of our children, one of the following things must be in place. So there has to be a minimum of 2 unrelated ministry personnel present for supervision, except in the case of an emergency, or one ministry personnel needs to be present in the room at all times with a clear line of sight. So that can be either through windows or the door being propped open from the room with the one ministry personnel and the kids in the room. Now, during this situation, there will be a designated hall monitor circulating periodically from room to room just to make sure that everything is going good. Next, any ministry personnel between the ages of 12 to 16 must be buddied up with someone that is at least the age of 17 or older. So the ministry personnel that is older than 17, they are allowed to work alone or not be buddied up with someone else in the classroom. So they're allowed to teach and supervise alone, but in that situation, once again, there needs to be a window that they can see through with a clear line of sight, or the door needs to be propped open, once again, with a hall monitor that is circulating periodically. We also have it that it's recommended that there's at least a 5-year age gap between the leader or the ministry personnel and any children that are in the room. As well, if you're in the room and if you have a parent or a guardian that is asking and wanting to sit in on the classroom, there are a few things that need to be done. So first, their attendance needs to be taken, and that's going to be kept on file for that session. And they'll have to have a name tag that identifies that they're a visitor, that they're a parent or a guardian. And if they've not been screened or if they've not been approved, then they'll not be placed in a position of trust with the children who are not their own. So if they're in the room, they're just going to stick with their own child, just for safety of everyone else. Once again, all ministry personnel volunteering, so all of our volunteers and leaders during ministry, especially in kids, are to be easily identified, either with a name tag, a lanyard, or a piece of specific clothing. So when we are receiving kids or releasing children, especially in the nursery, preschool room, and the JKSK, so babies all the way to kindergarten, there's a few things that need to be put in place when we're receiving and releasing the children. So this is for, like I said, the nursery, preschool, and the kindergarten room. First, all of the kids have to be checked in. So check-in is mandatory for all kids. They can check in at the check-in desk that is in the lobby. They will get their name tag, and they can put their name tag on, and then they can head into their room. So in order to be in a kid's room, they must have a sticker. And any children are not to be dropped off without any ministry personnel that are in there. So if they want to go into the classroom, there has to be a volunteer in the room. Now, when it comes to releasing the kids back to the parents or back to the designated guardian, every parent or guardian has to have the parent tag with them. So they will receive a parent tag when they check in their kids before they get dropped off, and they have to keep that parent tag with them during the service. And once they go back to get their kid back, they have to hand in the parent tag that matches. Now, if the internet is down, all the parents and the guardians will have to go through a few steps to protect their children by having a handwritten parent tag and needing a signature from a parent. As well, during parent pickup, so parents and visitors are not allowed to enter the nursery, the preschool room, or the JKSK when picking up unless it's required to, unless they were asked to by the ministry personnel that were in there. Next, for moving along in ages, we have the elementary students. So when we're receiving and releasing our elementary age students, so that's from grades 1 to 5, once again, all children must be signed in and receive a name tag, and the parents must receive a parent tag before they can head on into their classroom. So once again, elementary students and newcomers are to remain in the classroom until the parents or designated adult comes to pick them up. Once again, the parent or designated adult must present the parent tag to the ministry personnel. Now, because we have check-in, obviously there's going to be attendance. So when it comes to attendance, every child and every ministry personnel must be checked in using Planning Center, which is our system here at the church that we use for check-ins. Now, once again, if the internet is down, then all the children and ministry personnel will be checked in using just paper form, and there will be signatures from the parents. Now, in kids ministry, there's obviously going to be kids that need to go to the washroom. So there's a few things that we have in place when it comes to kids and the washrooms. So first, for the nursery, diaper changing procedures have to be clearly posted, but it's strongly recommended that the parent or the guardian comes to change any diapers. If they're unable to come, then diaper changing will only be done by the designated ministry personnel, who would most likely be the team lead, and the diaper change will be completed with a view of other ministry personnel. Once again, it's really recommended that the diaper changes be done by the child's parent. Now, preschool children are not able to go to the washroom alone. So one of the following has to be adhered to when a preschooler goes to the washroom. So either 2 ministry personnel will escort a group of children to the washroom, or 1 ministry personnel will escort a child or a group of children to the washroom, with a hall monitor being appointed and helping in the washroom duties. As well as no ministry personnel will ever be alone with a child in any washroom, and they're never to go into the cubicle or the washroom with the door shut. Now, if the preschooler does need assistance in the washroom, once again, we're going to leave the doors open and another volunteer will come and assist with them. So once a preschool child needs assistance in the washroom, ministry personnel may enter the washroom, but the door has to stay open and there has to be someone else in there, because we need to take into consideration the privacy of the child. Now, for our elementary age kids, our elementary age children are not to be sent to the washroom alone, but they can be accompanied by a buddy in the same age and the same gender as them. Now, once again, ministry personnel will escort the children to the washroom, and they will remain outside the washroom door and wait for the children to be done before escorting them back to the classroom. Once again, if they need any assistance, then the door is going to remain propped open and they will not enter the cubicle, and there will be at least 2 ministry personnel helping the child in the washroom. Now, when it comes to illness, everybody gets sick, and we have some procedures in place for this so that kids aren't spreading any sickness to other kids, families, or any of our volunteers. So a child who is ill and could expose any other illness is not to be received into any of the kids' rooms. So for example, if a child has a known fever, if they're tired, they're coughing, sneezing, runny nose, runny eyes, vomiting, inflamed mouth or throat, those are just some of the things that they might have. If they do have any of those, they're not allowed to be in any of the classrooms. As well as if a child has any known communicable diseases, such as like chickenpox or hand, foot, and mouth, and many other diseases like that. Once again, the child is not allowed to enter the classroom. They can head home and watch community kids online. Now, moving along for medication, ministry personnel are not to give or apply any medication for the kids. So parents are to be contacted and should administer the medication to their children. Now, if a child does need to have medication in the kids' areas, then they must be brought in the original container with the doctor's prescription dosage and the date clearly printed on the original label and original bottle. So in kids ministry, kids love to give hugs and stuff like that. So we're going to talk about the proper displays of affection when it comes to children. So we recognize that children need appropriate displays of affection that reflect pure, genuine, and positive displays of God's love. Now, appropriate touch with children will be age and developmentally appropriate, but all touch must be done in the view of others. So you're not going to be one-on-one with a child. There's going to be no touch happening. Then, all touch must be done in the view of other people. So we encourage ministry leaders too. So these are some examples of appropriate displays of affection and appropriate touch when it comes to children. So hold a preschool or nursery child that is crying. Speak to a child at eye level and listen with your eyes and your ears. Hold a child's hand when they're walking with them, or gently hold the child's shoulder or hand to keep their attention while you redirect the child's behavior. Or put your arm around the child that is in need of comforting, or pat the child on the head, shoulder, or back to comfort them or affirm them. Now, along the lines of appropriate touch, there is also inappropriate touch with children. Now, these are a list of things that should never be done in children's ministry. Under no circumstance would any of these type of touch be done. So we do not kiss or coax a child to kiss you. We do not engage in extended hugging or tickling. We do not hold a child's face when talking to them or disciplining them. We do not touch a child in any area that would be covered by a bathing suit. And we do not carry older children or have older children sit on your lap. And we have to avoid prolonged physical contact with any child or youth. Now, bottom line for bullying is that bullying will be not tolerated at all. Any form of bullying will be not tolerated here at the church. And our children and youth have a right to a caring, respectful, and safe church environment where they will encounter God's love in action and through our words. Now, an anti-bullying policy is in effect here at all times and will be clearly communicated and enforced amongst the children and the youth. Now, all ministry personnel will take action to prevent bullying, teaching it, and helping prevent it. And they will also assist and support the children and youth that are being bullied. Along the lines of bullying, our church is committed to fostering an environment that is free of discrimination and harassment. And any individuals will be treated with respect and dignity. Now, every member of our church has a right to equal treatment with respect to ministry placement and with the respect of services and the facilities without discrimination or harassment based on the following prohibited grounds. So race, ancestry, place of origin, color, ethnic origin, citizenship, creed, sex, age, marital status, family status, or disability. Lastly, internet and computer use. So this is something that's very important, especially now with social media and digital age being so relevant in our children. So relationships between children and ministry personnel are to be conducted with the parameters set by the church. So communication outside of the scheduled programs should only be done with the parent's knowledge and, if possible, with the participation of the parent or guardian. So when communication on the telephone, include the parent on the call. All email communications with any child or youth should have the parent copied and the ministry lead as well. Communication on Facebook, Instagram, and any other social media networks must be avoided for the protection of the child, youth, and the ministry personnel. No photographs of children or youth will not be taken without prior approval, written approval by the parents or guardians. So no photographs will be posted on any social media, once again, without any written approval. So for example, here when we have summer camp, one of the boxes that they tick off on their forms is if they would like their picture taken, and they can either say yes or no. Anyways, thank you so much for listening all about how we can keep our kids safe here at CPC.
Youth policy training. My big focus, my big takeaway for the youth policy training is this: we are team players. We are team players. We are a team. So that means we want to pay attention to others, your other teammates, your other leader personnel, leaders in training. We want to pay attention to other people. If you see them in a room, help them out, be there, be present, because we are a team. We want to pay attention to the other person and we want to support one another. We are a team. Contacting opportunities. This can be found on page 17. Ministry personnel are encouraged to meet with youth in small group settings and in teams. We are asking that you don't meet with a student in a closed one-on-one place, but it's in a group, small group settings in teams. Youth ministry personnel standards. This can be found on page 18 to 17. Physical contact. You may ask, what is appropriate touch? Listen, high fives, fist bumps, elbows, that is appropriate touch. What is inappropriate touch? That would be anything lower than the shoulders. That would be a longer back, extended hugs, things like that. That's inappropriate touch. Ministry personnel must be cognizant of conduct that could be misinterpreted. Things like horseplay, extended back rubs, and things like that. Leaders, ministry personnel must be aware of what can be misinterpreted. Dealing with injuries. This is on page 19. Stay with the youth for comfort and information. So if an injury takes place, if something happens at a youth night or a midweek program, off-site event, things like that, the leader, the ministry personnel must stay with the youth for comfort and for information. If the injury is severe, call 911 and request an ambulance. The leader would then call the parents, and if the parents are unavailable, you would contact the person on the consent form. Things for off-site events, you would have waivers, and you would want to make sure that you have a second number to contact if the parents are unable to be reached. The leader, the ministry personnel, would travel with the youth to the hospital and wait for the parents. So we don't want the youth just to go in the ambulance by themselves. We want a leader to be with the student, be with the individual at the hospital and waiting till the parents arrive. And also you will complete an incident report. Retreats and off-site events, page 20 to 22. Youth attending retreat and overnight events will be not allowed to leave without the permission from ministry personnel. Female and male youth are not allowed in each other's rooms or tents for any reason during retreats and overnight events, and they are not permitted to sleep in mixed company. Screened personnel are never to be alone in a room with a child or youth. At no time should a personnel sleep in the same bed with a youth, child, or vulnerable person. Transportation, page 20 to 21. Drivers must obey all rules of the road, and so if there was an event or a off-site event and you must drive, or if you're picking up a group of students, in order to be a driver, you must obey all rules of the road. It is preferred that parents arrange for rides to events. So we're trying our best to make sure that parents are actually going to be the ones who are driving their students to these events. The number of occupants must not exceed the number of working seat belts. So if you have 4 people in the car, make sure you have 4 working seat belts. And if you want to be a driver, to drive a youth, a personnel must, 1, be approved by the ministry lead, such as myself or another pastor, provide a copy of their valid driver's license, and provide a copy of their car insurance. Communicating in a digital world, page 21. This is the reality. Youth, they are on social media, and so we want to be doing our best to protect you. And so email communication should be saved for the protection of both the student and leader and personnel. Social media communication must be saved for the protection of both the student and personnel. And any posting of photos or videos must be carefully thought out and removed if requested. For myself, the way that I practice this is that I have a group conversation with my wife Malaya and the student. So make sure that there is that extra accountability, and I also keep the messages. And so in short, the 3 big ideas is this: know your surroundings. When you're in a room When you're in a place, be aware of your surroundings. Would this be misinterpreted where you're at? Things like that. Be aware of your surroundings. Know your actions, know what you're doing, and know your words. Be aware of these three things. Know your surroundings, know your actions, and know your words. Thank you so much.
Our Community Protect policy states in paragraph 2.4 regarding vulnerable adult protection procedures the following. Ushers and greeters and frontline adult workers are to be alert to any potential problem arising that needs to be dealt with in a caring and diplomatic way. Let's look at that again. Ushers and greeters and frontline adult workers. This covers a large range of ministries here at CPC. Are to be alert to any potential problem arising that needs to be dealt with in a caring and diplomatic way. We need to be aware of our surroundings and alert to any possible issue that may arise. And please deal with these issues in a caring and diplomatic way. This is our policy, and now I'm going to speak about who is a vulnerable adult, types and prevention of abuse, and some best practices. A vulnerable adult is a person who, because of their age, disability, or other circumstance, whether temporary or permanent, is in a position of dependence on others or is otherwise at a greater risk than the general population of being harmed by a person or persons in a position of authority or trust. Abuse awareness is not about us not trusting you. It's about our community trusting us. Vulnerable adult abuse is the mistreatment of an elderly person or a vulnerable adult by someone he or she should be able to rely on. It's often described as misuse of power and a violation of trust. There is physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and neglect. Abuse prevention. 7 steps for prevention are: learn the facts and understand the risk. Realities, not trust, should influence your decisions. Minimize opportunity. If you eliminate or reduce one-on-one situations, you dramatically lower the risk of sexual abuse. Talk about it. Individuals often keep abuse a secret, but barriers can be broken down by talking openly about it. Stay alert. Don't expect obvious signs when someone is being sexually abused. Signs are often there, but you have to spot them. Make a plan. Learn where to go, who to call, and how to react. Act on suspicions. Someone's well-being may depend on it. And lastly, get involved. Vulnerable adult protection is more easily isolated and hidden from public view. Financial abuse is the misuse of an older adult's funds and assets without that person's knowledge and/or full consent, or the case of an older adult who is not mentally capable, not in the person's best interests. There's often denial or access or control over the individual's own funds, misuse of the individual's financial resources, refusal to spend money on care, stealing personal items or belongings, isolating, theft, fraud, or forgery, misuse of power of attorney. When you go to visit at a care center, we ask that you conduct your visits with 2 screened personnel. Carry a cell phone for emergencies. Check in with a nurse or attendant. Do not assist with personal care. Do not remove the individual unless prearranged. Keep records of visits and incidents. If you're alone, keep hospital doors and curtains open and remain in view of others. Stay in common rooms or areas. And for visitation in homes, conduct visits with 2 screened personnel. Again, carry a cell phone for emergencies. Arrange the visit in advance, establishing an appointment start and end time. Establish a clear purpose. Stay in common areas and rooms. Do not remove the individual unless prearranged. Do not assist with medication, and keep record of visits. Now, if your visit is off-site, meet in an open public place. Stay in one place. Avoid traveling alone. Carry a cell phone for emergencies. Stay in view of others. Establish an approximate start and end time and a clear purpose. And again, keep record. Vulnerable adults with disabilities service standards. Dignity. Service is provided in a way that allows the person with a disability to maintain self-respect and respect of other people. People with disabilities are not treated as an afterthought or forced to accept lesser service, quality, or convenience. Independence. Allow a person with a disability to do things on his or her own without unnecessary help or interference from others. Integration. Service is provided in a way that allows the person with a disability to benefit from the same services in the same place and in the same or similar way as others, unless an alternative measure is necessary to enable the person to access goods or services. Equal opportunity. People with disabilities have an opportunity equal to that given to others to have access to goods and services. Accessibility training. Abilities change throughout life and may change as people age. They may have temporary disabilities or permanent ones. Disabilities may be visible or hidden, severe or mild, singular or multiple, chronic or intermittent. Ontario requires all frontline volunteers to be trained on accessible customer service at accessforward.ca. Please ensure you have completed the accessibility training and submitted your signed certificate of training to the church office. Reporting and response. We report child abuse, that's our legal duty, but we respond to vulnerable adult abuse. We support and encourage. Gain a relationship of trust and give opportunity for them to express concerns. Ask yourself, is this an emergency? Is this person capable of making a report on their own? Is the person ready to respond? If they are resisting all efforts of intervention, express concerns for their well-being, provide a number to call for help, inform them about abuse and that they are not alone. Encourage them to consider what to do next time. Arrange for a follow-up visit. Develop a safety plan. We want to do what's best for the individual and assist them and support them. Some CPC best practices is there is a 6-month waiting period to volunteer, with the exception if you're transferring from another PAOC church in good standing. Complete and submit an application form. There's an interview. References are checked. Police record check is required. CPC Protect training is required, and the accessibility training, which is a legal duty as well. Our vulnerable adults deserve to be treated in a safe and loving way. Let's do our part. Thank you.
In this last part of our CPC protection policy training, I want to talk to you about the issue of reporting. One of the things that's very difficult for a volunteer to do is to step into a situation and report it to Children's Aid or to some authority. And I want to make sure that you understand what's required and the legal obligation that is upon you. So let's talk about some of the things that we need to consider. First of all, when we talk about abuse, we want to be looking for signs of physical abuse. And let me just start by saying this. Every time there is a situation, it's not usually just one element that needs to be spotted. There are usually multiple elements for you to be paying attention to. I always share the story that when my son Brock was just a little boy, he used to climb trees all the time. And so he would often fall and bang up his legs, and he would have bruises. And so if you simply saw a bruise on his leg, you might go, wow, he's being abused. We don't look for just one sign. We look for multiple signs that are tied together that show abuse. So let's start with signs of physical abuse. The child wears long sleeves, long pants, even in warm weather. There may be excessive crying. The child seems anxious when other children are crying. Avoidance of physical contact with others. Behavioral extremes. Sometimes the child will be aggressive, and other times the child may be withdrawing. There's poor self-concept, whispered speech. There may be a loss of appetite for no apparent reason or excessive appetite. The child is wary of adults. There's reenactment of abuse using dolls, drawings, or maybe even another friend or another person. An abused child may be very clingy. They may express delinquent behavior. There may be injuries to an immobile infant. And so, an immobile infant's not going to be climbing a tree, so they're not going to have the bruises. There will be injuries with no explanation or changing story. Or there will be injuries that have a pattern that reveal an object has been used. So friends, pay attention to when you see some of those signs. What about signs of neglect? They're missing a key article of clothing, over or underdressed for weather conditions. Now friends, once again, let me just stop here for a second. I want to remind you, it's got to be multiple things that we're looking for. I had a friend when I was growing up who went through the winter wearing shorts. His mom would always provide more than enough that he needed. He just was always hot, and so he wore shorts. So just because someone's underdressed doesn't mean that there's neglect. We need to ask some key questions. Other signs of neglect might be height and weight significantly below the age level, consistent school absenteeism, persistent hunger, trouble concentrating, low self-esteem, body odor, child assumes adult responsibilities, always being dirty and severely unkept, sleepiness or always being tired, or maybe the child steals food, lunch money from others. Signs of emotional abuse. A child who's been emotionally abused will sometimes have a sudden change in self-confidence. They may have headaches or stomach aches with no medical cause. They may actually have destructive behavior or abnormal fears, increased nightmares. There may be failure to gain weight, especially in infants. They may be desperately affectionate, or may show desperately affectionate behavior. There may be speech disorders such as stuttering or stammering. There may be habit disorders such as biting, rocking, head banging. They could be argumentative or consistent temper tantrums. They could use bullying tactics. They may be easily frustrated, or their behavior is in the extreme, either very disobedient or overly compliant. What about sexual abuse? Well, some of the signs of sexual abuse are sudden change in self-confidence, headaches or stomach aches with no medical cause, destructive behavior, abnormal fears or increased nightmares, failure to gain weight, especially in infants, desperately affectionate behavior, speech disorder, stuttering and stammering, habit disorders, biting, rocking or head banging, argumentative, consistent temper tantrums, bullying tactics, being easily frustrated, behavior extremes, disobedient or overly compliant. They're engaging in age-appropriate sexual play. They may communicate age-inappropriate sexual knowledge, or they force or coerce another child to engage in sexual play. Now friends, as you've heard some of the signs, it's very clear that whether it's a physical abuse or emotional abuse or sexual abuse, that some of them have crossovers. I want to just highlight this one more time. When you know somebody has been abused or have a good reason to suspect that someone's been abused, you're going to be able to check off a few things that cause the red flags to go up. It's not just one thing, but it's usually a few things. And there may be more than one abuse that's there. Hey, so what happens when you have observed certain things that make you believe that someone has been abused? Well, according to Section 125 of the Child, Youth, and Family Service Act, it says every person who has a reasonable grounds to suspect that a child is or may be in need of protection must promptly report the suspicion and the information upon which it is based to the CAS. So friends, that means that you as a volunteer have an obligation. If you believe that someone's been abused, you have an obligation to report this to Children's Aid Society. It also says that it needs to be done promptly. So I want to talk to you just about a couple key things of this. First of all, as of 2018, this includes 16 and 17-year-olds. This is not just for little children, this is including up to the age of 17. The Act also says that there needs to be reasonable grounds. And what that means is that there needs to be information an average person obtained through normal and honest judgment. So what happens when you are at the place where you feel that you need to report to CAS? Well, you need to go to your supervisor or your pastoral overseer and ask for a suspected abuse form. Then you are to fill that out and report to CAS some key details. This can be done by yourself, the person who's responsible, or it can be done with your pastor or supervisor. Lastly, I'd ask that you would somehow get the information to me that we're dealing with a situation. We want to make sure that we're able to respond as best as we can, that we're paying attention to the situation within church ministry programs. So make sure that I'm able to find out the information as well. What are you reporting? Well, first of all, you're going to report the details of what you've observed or what's been communicated to you. You also need to report when those observations or communication pieces took place, the dates and the times. Next, you need to report the full name, the date of birth, and the address of the minor or the vulnerable person. Now, you probably don't have everybody's information memorized, but that's why it's important to go and talk to your supervisor or pastoral overseer. They'll have the information through Planning Center and be able to help you out with your report. Some really key things for you to understand when it comes to reporting. Do not investigate or ask leading questions. So if you see something or if someone comes and communicates, don't dive in like an investigator trying to get more information or even trying to justify the fact that you're going to call. Simply observe and listen. Next, do not promise a minor that you won't report something. Pretend you're a youth leader and you're having an altar moment and a student comes to you and says, hey, I need to share something with you, but you got to promise you won't tell anybody. Well, friends, in those moments, you can't make that promise. What you should say is something like this. Hey, I'm really interested in hearing what you have to say, and I want to make sure that you're in a healthy spot. If what you're about to share with me places a legal responsibility on my part to report this, I'm going to have to. But I still would encourage you to share with me because I want to do what's best for you, and you need to think about sharing what's best for you also. Do not warn a guardian. This person may be your best friend, they may be the person who lives next door, or somebody you carpool with. But don't warn them that somebody has filled out a suspected abuse form or called CAS. Leave it with the people who are in charge of doing the investigation. Lastly, friends, do practice confidentiality. It's important that we contain this. And it may come to nothing. The CAS may find that there's been no abuse. And so we don't want to be sharing things that predetermine a guilty verdict for somebody. So please keep it confidential. I do want to say this. I know there are times that people are very hesitant when it comes to reporting. And they're concerned that if they report a suspected abuse, that they will be responsible for a child being removed from their home. First of all, when you report, CAS doesn't come right into the home and pull a child out. They will either open up a file or they will add your report to a file that's already been ongoing on this individual. You see, they want to make sure that they do the proper investigation before they ever make a serious decision that impacts the wholeness of a family. So you're not responsible for making that happen. Secondly, if the child does get taken out of the home, it's not your fault that took place. It's the person who brought about the abuse. You also need to remember that by you reporting, you are ensuring that the people you're serving are most protected. So even though it seems like some big deal and it seems often like the last thing we want to do, my encouragement is that you would follow the law and that you would do so without any guilty feeling within your life. Well, friends, that brings us to the end of our protection policy training. And I'm sure that there have been questions that have come to your mind through the various sections. We are here to answer any questions and bring clarity to any situation that you might have. I want to thank you for doing this online training. And most of all, friends, I want to thank you for serving here at CPC. Together we minister to a community where we believe Jesus Christ will be lifted up. So thank you for being with us today.